Thank you for joining us for Hope in the Darkness. Tonight we're going to talk about hide and seek, how that life seems to be unfair. I don't know where you are right this second, but there's no question you have uttered the word somehow, how can this be? Or why is this happening? Or why is it so unfair? In fact, as I raised my four boys, one of the words I heard the most was, that's not fair. In fact, all of us have felt that at some point, whether it's in relationship, in our job, or dealing with just different circumstances in life. In fact, Jesus even tells some parables about how that life isn't fair. I remember playing hide and seek with my sons and how that they would hide, but if I didn't find them in the order they thought that I should hide them in, they would say, that's not fair, Dad, that's not fair. Well, we feel that way often, particularly when bad things happen to us. We begin to yell, that's not fair. How can that happen to me? Maybe it's your work, maybe it's your school, maybe it's your relationship, maybe it's your health. On and on life goes as we cry out that it's not fair. In fact, our world isn't fair. And one of the things I've constantly told my boys is, as long as you're alive in this world, nothing's really going to be fair. There's years ago, a socialist came to Carnegie and said, you're the richest man in the world, that's not fair. You should divide your wealth among the poor. So he went to his assistant and he said, hey, how much am I worth? And she jotted it down. He said, and how big is the population? And she jotted that down. He said, divide that up. And he went and he said, okay, this man right here, give him his portion of my wealth. It was 16 cents. Wasn't fair. He thought he got a lot more coming if he won that argument. You see, as long as there's a broken world and there's sin in this world and there's people, life's not going to be fair. And we feel like that truth and justice seems to hide. And we'll see it for a while and we seek that, but yet it still seems to hide and we can't quite get a grip on it because things haven't gone exactly the way that we wanted. In Psalm 143, as the psalmist writes, he cries for mercy. He makes this petition to be heard because he realizes that he needs his life to be spared. Things haven't gone the way that he wants, and he's struggling about, how can this be? I've followed you, I've done what you wanted, God, and things aren't turning out the way that I hoped or dreamed, like many of you are feeling right now. And so he appeals to God's faithfulness and God's righteousness, trying to say, God, I need you. Where are you? And the whole idea is there's this enemy, and this enemy, as we fight the enemy, it's against darkness and against death, and we're trying to overcome, but it seems like we can't get ahead, and so we plead for mercy. At the end of the psalm, the psalmist writes and says, teach me your will. You see, he's grown faint, and he's not so sure he has just enough to hang on to. He's asking God not to hide from him. In fact, he's seeking God, and he says, God, where are you? I can't find you. I've looked in the righteous place. I've looked in all these places, and I don't know where you are. And then he says, God, come quickly, or God, bring justice quickly. It's where all of us have been, weak, weary, wanting to know where justice is. We feel like it's hiding, and it can't come quick enough. But he says in the end, bring a word of your love to me in the morning. At night, things look very dim, but in the morning, there's often a little bit of hope. And then he cries for this rescue. He says, bring me out of trouble, for I am your servant, is the way he ends. In God's servants, there are answers. We're going to end with a couple discussion questions that I hope you'll talk to somebody about, whether it's in your household or FaceTime or whatever you need to do. As you look at that, the song, Blessed Be Your Name, about the idea that God can give and take away, but he's still blessed and he's still working in our lives. But in just a minute, you're going to hear from Jane Vandenberg. Jane was a student here, raised by a single mom. Her mom died, and the things that it left her about, but in her struggle, she found hope in the midst of darkness. You can too. No matter where you are, God still has answers for you.
Hi everybody, my name is Jane Vanderberg, and I was asked to share with y'all just a few minutes of my story and just what I've been through and how God has really helped me through that. So I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised my whole life there, and in 2012 I came here to Searcy to start college at Harding and still haven't left. So I now work in the Office of Admissions here at Harding, and I work with students coming from Middle and East Tennessee, which is really fun to get to work with my home state of students. So I've been here, like I said, for 8 years now, been here the whole time. And so yeah, that's just a little bit about me. At the end of my sophomore year here, which would have been 2014, my mom came to Searcy to help me move out of my dorm room in May, just like at the end of the semester, like completely normal. I was actually going to be staying here for an intercession class, and so she moved me out of my dorm, but then moved me into Monty and Beth Cox's house, where I was going to be staying for my 2-week class that I was taking. And so she got me moved in, and she left on a Saturday afternoon. She drove back to Nashville, went to my grandparents' house the next day, which was Mother's Day. And they just had a lot of really tough conversations. My family was kind of going through a lot at that time. And so she had a very long, kind of stressful day of conversations with them about different issues that were going on. So on top of just spending forever moving me out of my dorm room because I had way too much stuff, traveling 6 hours one way, and then a very long day at my grandparents' house, she got back to her house at about 8 or 8:15 that Sunday night. We talked on the phone for just a few minutes. It was very short, just to wish her happy Mother's Day. Then she reminded me to call my grandma, say the same thing to her, and that was it. I think we were on the phone for like 3 minutes or so. Everything was fine. Called my grandma. Tried to call her back. Call my mom back after I talked to my grandma, but she didn't answer, and so I just assumed, she was busy or already went to sleep. And I was woken up the next morning. Morning is a stretch. It was probably about 3 or 4 in the middle of the night, and Beth Cox was telling me that there were police at the door and I needed to call home. And so long story short, I found out that my mom had a seizure in the bathtub, and she'd had them kind of on and off her whole life. But she unfortunately had a seizure in the bathtub, and she actually drowned. It was a complete shock to me, my whole family. She was in perfectly fine health. I mean, great shape. We had all just seen her or talked to her within, a few days. I talked to her on the phone, it turns out just a few minutes before. So it was a complete shock for all of us. Monty Cox and Beth drove me to my dad's house in Tennessee for us to get back to my family. And obviously that whole week is a huge blur for me, and I don't remember a lot of it. But in the time that followed, especially that summer, I unfortunately had not had any plans that summer. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have any summer classes or anything I was going to take, and I'd been looking forward to that. But then once my mom passed away, it turned into, we're going to clean out her house, we're going to deal with the legal stuff and talk to lawyers, and it was obviously just a lot. I was so ready to come back to college that fall, just because I was exhausted and mentally and physically had just been through obviously a lot that summer. So that summer was hard for sure. And I wouldn't say that I ever doubted God or lost faith in him, because I don't feel that way. But I definitely remember questioning, why me? Why my family? Why my mom? It all seems so senseless and could have been completely avoided. It was just a complete accident that just really we all struggled with. And of course, to this day, there's still a lot of things that are hard and things that we still have to deal with and work through just because of such a sudden loss. The scripture for this week, as y'all know, is Psalm 143, which is just a really deep emotional part of scripture. But I just want to read a few quick lines that are here from the Message interpretation of it. Let me see here. I sat there in despair, my spirit draining away. My heart was heavy like lead. I remember the old days when over all you've done, pondered the ways you've worked, stretched out my hands to you, as thirsty for you as a desert is thirsty for rain. Hurry with your answer, God. I'm nearly at the end of my rope. Don't turn away. Don't ignore me. That would be certain death. If you wake me each morning with the sound of your loving voice, I'll go to sleep each night trusting in you. Point out the road I must travel. I'm all ears, all eyes before you. Save me from my enemies, God. You're my only hope. Teach me how to live to please you, because you're my God. Lead me by your blessed spirit into cleared and level pasture land. Keep up your reputation, God. Give me life. In your justice, get me out of this trouble. In your great love, vanquish my enemies. Make a clean sweep of those who harass me. And why? Because I'm your servant. And that just really resonated with me now and then. Just feeling not abandoned or forsaken, but just left with a lot of questions. Like I said, a lot of why me, why my family, why are you doing this to us? I'd always been the person who nothing bad had ever happened to me. I had a pretty normal life, normal friends, normal church upbringing, normal college experience. Everything was very average in my life up until this point. And I was just really confused, and I was really hurt and upset, obviously, about a lot of it, and just felt very hopeless in the situation and didn't know why. That was the biggest thing, is what's going on. What can I do to fix this? And I really just realized that there's nothing we can do to fix it. Obviously, it was a tragic accident that I don't wish on anybody, but it taught me a lot about myself and about my family and just about God and his love for his people, that we will endure through him because we are his servants. He is our creator. And everything happens, for a good purpose. It may not be a fun purpose or a good purpose at that time. But, in hindsight, I can see so many good things that came from such a tragic accident and a tragic time in my history and in my family's history. So there are definitely still days when it's hard and still struggle with the why and the hopelessness that I felt and my family felt. But we just have to realize that there's more to this life than our own feelings and our own emotions and even our own questions. I finally realized at some point in the year following my mom's passing that, I wasn't going to have heaven open up with an answer for me as to my why questions. And that was okay, because it didn't affect my relationship with God. It didn't affect my desire to be a Christian or to follow him. I was confused. I was hurt, but it did not turn me away from him or want me to be any different person than I was beforehand. I was really determined to not just be the girl whose mom died after sophomore year of college. And I knew with God's help that he would get me through that, and that he would not let that be a defining trait that I carried. And I'm so thankful for just how God has worked in my life and in my family's life since then, and how I'm so thankful that we have scripture like Psalm 143 and so many others that just show us that we're going to go through tough times. That's absolutely understandable and expected, and we should just be ready for it. If you haven't had anything bad happen to you yet like that, of course, I don't hope that on you, and I pray for you when that time comes, because it will come. We just have to be ready for it, and we just have to prepare ourselves as Christians to know that God works all things for the good of those who love him, and that includes us. And so I may not understand it. I may not have the answers to my why questions, but that doesn't mean he's any less good than he was before the accident happened. So I hope this has encouraged you in some way, and I hope that you really take a good look, go to scripture, see what God has to say, so that if you haven't had those bad times yet, you are spiritually equipped, you are scripturally equipped for when the time comes, that you will be ready to grieve and hurt, but with God right by your side, waking you up each morning and getting you to sleep each night. It's helped me so much. So thank you for watching. I hope y'all have a great week. Bye, guys.
Be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on a road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be